We're doing a tier list here for the RE games. Now, I haven't played all of them. There are some on here I have not played. Or if I have played, it was only like once, and it was a long time ago. So some of these will not be included on this list, obviously. Yes, Sam? And I've done these before, but they tend to be... they tend to be, you know, they kind of evolve. They change over time. You know, how you perceive something can change over the course of time. There's a lot of you that hate this stream a lot more today than you did yesterday. Or heck, you might even like it a little better. Point is the fact that stuff does evolve and change over time, how you feel about it, and so I like to keep these up to date. And again, these are just my opinion. You know, there's no need for animosity or anything in that regard. Hey there, Mero. Good to see ya. Coming in with the peepo. Arrive. RE3R is SS plus tier. Peepo leave. Well, I'm glad you let us know that. But all right, yeah. So yeah, this is it. You know, I do these usually just I post them on YouTube. I figured I'd do this one live because why not? So yeah, yeah. So yeah, this kind of marks the ending of the story marathon, I would say too. And we kind of reached that mark. But yeah. So why don't we get started? We'll go ahead and start Resident Evil 1 OG. I will put in the A tier. I think this game is consistently very fun to play. I would say it has no true flaws other than like really cheesy voice acting and being kind of a product of the late 90s. It's limited compared to some of the games that come after it, but I don't think it does much, if anything, wrong. Otherwise, it may be a little too top heavy on what it gives you in terms of you can get a lot of supplies in that game if you really look for everything. But nah, it's excellent. I think both campaigns are fun. It laid some excellent groundwork, and it's still fun to play today. It has a great pace to it, great flow to it. It's one of my favorites to play today, right now. Hey there, Foxhound. Good to see you. So we'll move on. Let's see here. Alrighty. I can't find what I'm looking for because I am blind, apparently. Ah, yes, here we go. RE2 Classic will get the notch above into the S. It takes everything that the first game did well, I would say, except makes it a little scarier. I'd say much more imposing present villain, much better story, really cool zapping moments throughout the campaigns between Claire and Leon, who are both very well done. The interactions between the A and the B scenario is excellent. Both Sherry and Ada are good for the most part. You know, Mr. X is amazing in the B scenario, but the old Leon B, especially on RE2 Classic, is just amazing. It's so good. I can't say enough. But this is the one I started with, so there's probably a little bit of bias there, but it's continued to always be towards the top for me. I think it is just an exceptional game, full through and through. Classic holds it. Yeah, it is probably the biggest survival horror game in terms of impact, truly establishing the genre that there's been. Like RE1 kind of laid that groundwork that was there with stuff like Clock Tower and whatnot, but RE2 is the one that like broke it through and made it everything, and it really shows when you play it. It's just a very high quality game, great music. At the time it released, it was among the best visuals. Yeah, just great stuff. RE3, I'm actually demoting to an A. Now the thing is, like, RE3 is takes a lot of the stuff tech wise and improves over RE2. For me though, when I play RE3, this is where my preference will come in. I think it's weird because this game, it's a borderline action horror game. It pretty well enters that, but for me, I enjoy being in a centralized area and the flow more than it feels like you're always on the go. And after the enormity of RE2, it does feel very small, and I know that's kind of the point and everything, but Matt, thank you for the 54-month resub, by the way. Tier 2, no less. It feels a little limited in that regard. So it's weird though. It's also very it's very quick, but and it's more action focused. But I would say Nemesis is the scariest thing any of these games has to offer, aside from a few maybe Mr. X jump scares or Liquor through the interrogation room jump scare. But for me, I find replaying it not as enjoyable as the first two, but still really good. It's an exceptional game. It's just, I don't enjoy the flow of it quite the same as the other ones. Alright, so we'll go to RE Survivor next. We're gonna throw that one in the old D tier. Survivor is what it is. It's so cheesy. It's cheesy beyond cheese, but there is a little bit of fun to be had with the game though. I'll admit, it's enjoyable, but I mean, come on. What are we doing? You know, like the arc, I am arc, is so bad. You know, but I will say this, the final boss looks kind of cool. I don't know, you know, and they give you some decent weapons, and they tried something new. I'll give them that, but I think it works well enough. It's not the worst game here, for sure. It's dumb. It's kind of fun, though. But at the same point, yeah, you're a D tier. Alrighty. So up next, we've got Code Veronica, which I'll slot as a B. Code Veronica, for me, is getting kind of progressively worse and worse the more I play it. I used to have this game in my top 5 pretty handily, and the more I play it, the less I kind of like it. The game is insanely backtrack heavy, especially compared to any of the games. Like, it gets a lot of credit for being a big game and all this, but it's mainly because you spend so much time going back and forth. Not only do you do it with each one, but you also will do it with, you'll come back with Chris and go through some areas you went through with Claire again. And I still enjoy just the traditional tank style of game that it is, but it's definitely sliding down the list for me personally. You know, it is what it is. It's still got probably maybe my favorite soundtrack. I think Wesker is awesome in the game, but I would say the Ashfords I think they're bigger villains in terms of their actual lore than their impact on the game. I think their impact on the game feels a little limited, considering how big this game is, or how long it can take and everything. You really don't get a ton of them. You get some, especially Alexia, where she's, I don't know, she's kind of has problems that other villains we'll talk about later have, where they kind of exist to be the final boss as much as anything else. They're not present the way it feels like they should be. Although she does have the great fight scene with Wesker, which is probably the best part of that whole game. So we'll go to Re1 Remake, the game of games, the greatest survival horror game ever made, I would say. I have no reservation saying that. I think it topples Silent Hill 2 and several others of the genre. I think the atmosphere is perfection. The bosses are tremendous. I think just take the concept for the bosses for a minute. You have a giant snake, shark, and spider. Okay, those are probably the 3 most feared creatures you're gonna find. And then you have Lisa Trevor added, which is one of the best additions. That is the best addition any remake has ever made over its predecessor. Her whole storyline might be the best part of the whole game, let alone just the best part that they, added in. And then, like, the Tyrant is great. And then, of course, just the way the game develops, it's very similar. It's very true to the original. Like, you can... I never say this because playing them is very different, but this game does effectively replace this game. You don't lose out on a whole lot by not playing the OG if you just want, like, the true Resident Evil 1 experience. Also, welcome in, Zax. To me, it's the perfect remake. The best remake ever done. Just an exceptional game. And, it's always been one of my favorites, and I think I've just come to appreciate it more and more over the years, to be honest. Rather, just learning the speedruns for it, and doing all this other stuff with it. It's just, it's not going to be toppled from that list anytime soon. So RE0, I will put in the C tier. This game's actually kind of on the rise for me personally. Now, the game is maybe the best, I would say, visually in the whole series. Obviously, newer games look better with graphic improvements, but as far as how it's designed and how it's laid out, I think it may be one of the best, if not the best. I think the leads are both pretty weak, especially Billy. I think the boss lineup is pretty terrible. Which is where, and then of course there's the weird inventory management, and yet somehow it still has enough that RE1 Remake feel that I can start to find enjoyment in it the more I play it. So it's kind of gotten better over time for me, but yeah, it still has a terrible boss lineup, including the worst boss in the series is the giant bat. That bat is horrible. And it also has the, like I said, the inventory. And like I said, some weak leads. It does provide some good backstory. I think it kind of steps over itself a little bit in a few of the areas, but overall it's fine. It's solid. A corgi, but yeah, it's where it belongs, I think. Alrighty, so up next we'll go to let me find it on here. Gun Survivor 2, the game of games, fits politely into the F tier. I played this for the first time this past weekend, and this game is horrible. It is so bad. Now, this is called, the full name of this game is like Gun Survivor 2 Code Veronica. And yeah, it does use some Code Veronica assets, but it doesn't follow the Code Veronica storyline at all. Chris is not even in it. Wesker's not in it. There's Steve and Claire just escape. No big deal. But, I mean, it has Nemesis in it. Let's not forget. Yes, Nemesis somehow appears in it. But on top of all that, the gameplay is so clunky. It is so tough to aim in it. Like, I would contest Survivor 1 plays better, despite being much older and on a PS1 versus the PS2. Yeah, it is a train wreck of a video game. The one thing I'll say is it does have a good soundtrack, mostly because a lot of the music is borrowed from Code Veronica, but there are some songs, I don't remember being in Code Veronica anyway, that it does use that were actually pretty good. Other than that, though, yeah, it is a terrible game. It is rough. So this order, by the way, isn't perfect or anything, but we're just kind of I'm working with what we got here. So we'll do Dead Aim next. I'll put Dead Aim at a D. I'd say it's a little better than Survivor. It actually is a fairly decent game overall. But man, the story, the cutscenes, all this is bad. And I mean, like, really bad. The gameplay is not bad, but you know, they were trying some new things, and they kind of take the blend of the Survivor games. This is technically Survivor 4, with Dino Stalker being 3, but it has some really bizarre enemies. Yeah, the torpedo kids. It's just these, I mean, like, it's like a parody of itself at times. I don't know what the hell is going on with it. But yeah, as a whole, though, when I was actually just exploring the ship especially, and kind of once I got a feel of the controls, I enjoyed it for the most part there. Like, I would say anything on this D tier is playable. It's not a complete disaster. Like this, I'm probably never playing again. This game was terrible, but these have that value of there can be some fun to be had with them, and I think that it fits into that pretty well. Torpedo kids will live forever. Lucky us. So yeah, I'll settle it at the D spot. I think that's about right. All right, what do we got next? We'll do RE4 next. RE4 is easily the top tier. The most video game ever made, maybe. It is ridiculous. It's over the top, of course. Although not as over the top as some stuff we'll get to. But it revived the series after low sales of 0, and some of these other ones nearly killed it. But I think Leon is fantastic. Ada's great. The bosses I think it has the best boss lineup in the series. The story is straightforward, but it does everything it needs to do. They pretty well cover a lot of their tracks over the course of the game. The Krauser villain is excellent. Every character, every person has a reason to be there, and it's all well done, but the gameplay is solid. It has a great lineup of weapons, and you can get a ton of replay value by doing different choices with your weapons. You don't get aged out because you're using the starting pistol at the end of the game. You can use that starting pistol all the way through if you want, just the same as buying a new one. It is an excellent game, and when it came out visually, it was one of the best looking games ever made. Extremely intense game too. It's underrated for how intense it is. It kind of reminds me of RE3 in that way, where it's mostly like an action horror game, but when it wants to up the ante and be really intense, it can be. Like when you do that village ambush the first time, or like you deal with some of those bosses the first time, you're on the edge of your seat. That, or you're probably lying to yourself, but either way. The merchant has no reason. The merchant has a reason. He's there to sell you stuff and make money off of a trying time. But yeah, the game is tremendous. It is, to me, it's one of the pinnacle. Like I said, I would say this is the best survival horror game. Again, big difference in these two in that regard. They're two different They both fit under the umbrella of horror games, but they are, yeah, they're different. But anyway, so yeah, I think it still remains probably my favorite game I've ever played. Yeah, playing that game day one, there was nothing like it for me. It it blew my mind. Alrighty, so next we got RE5. RE5 would easily be right near the top if it wasn't for the fact that it's co-op and the fact that the co-op partner is horrendous. You will suffer many deaths because of Sheva, basically. And she kind of like managing the flow of the game because of the co-op partner really hurts it. Now, if you're playing co-op, it's great. It's an amazing game. It's probably an A if you're playing co-op. But if you're playing solo, it's probably down here, which is how I primarily play it. So that's why it's my tier list, you know. But the environments are amazing. Wesker is probably the best villain in terms of a main boss in the series. He flies off the rails, but he does it in the best way. And it shows a good progression for the character of how he goes from RE1 to Code Veronica to 5, of how they just kind of gradually up the ante with him till he does fly off the rails. It's great. He is excellent. You know, like RE4, it has a great weapons pool. You know, you can keep upgrading your weapons or stick with the same ones you have from the get-go. Yeah, very satisfying stuff. Again, some great DLC with it as well. That's something to mention as well. Is this game, the Lost in Nightmares DLC especially, is quite good. So yeah, it's just a solid game, really solid. It, like I said, Sheva kind of drags it down. There's a lot of great stuff here otherwise. Yeah, it stays strong for me over the, it's consistently been up there. Alrighty, so we'll do Revelations 1, I guess, next. I'm bumping this game up. This game's been a D for me for a long time. I'm bumping it up to a C. The most recent playthrough was actually pretty good. And I don't know, I started to enjoy it more. The game's problems are when you're not playing as Jill. When you're not playing as her, the game does really suffer. The side characters are terrible. Like, they are horribly written. But the thing is, not only are they badly written, what you do when you play as them is often not very fun. It's just filler content. It was, you know, it's just not very good. There's characters literally named Jackass in it for a reason. It's probably a little long-winded too. I mean, for a game that's originally a game or a DS game as well, I think it's probably a little longer than it needed to be. But yeah, as a whole, I did enjoy it more though, because again, I like the Jill parts a lot. I don't know, the game flowed a little better than I remembered. Yeah, so I'd say it took a step in the right direction. It's still mid-level though. It's still right here. You know, I might, you know, to where I'd play it more than maybe once a year now. There's some dumb spots where you can easily die, which is frustrating, and the final boss is terrible. I feel like I've said nothing but bad stuff about the game, but I had fun playing it. That's what really matters, let's not forget. I think the weapon, you don't upgrade your weapons directly so much as you can add attachments to them to, you know, make them stronger, give them more capacity, fire rate, all that stuff. I think that's pretty well handled. And yeah, it's a Jill game. How about that? You know, those are rare. So yeah, I'm giving it a boost. It is getting the promotion up to a C. Here we go, the controversial pick. We're giving RE6 is getting the bump to a B. RE6 is the most underrated video game maybe of all time. And I say that because RE6 is an action co-op game, is better than most action co-op games. It's stupid, it's way off the rails, but as an action co-op game with the intent of horror type creatures, it's not bad. It also has a ton of content. Four decently length campaigns, especially the Chris and the Leon ones. I think a lot of the monsters are pretty cool, or especially the boss style ones anyway. Even in Simmons is a ridiculous meme, and the whole concept of the story is built up around him failing as being a Ada simp and everything, but I don't know. I thought the game was fun. I think the characters are fun. I think all of them are I think all the characters you actually play as are quite good. Like Piers, even. I think Piers is excellent. He's probably the best, but Sherry and Jake's okay. Sherry's great. Chris is great. Leon's great. Helena's okay. Ada's, of course, amazing. It also removes a lot of the co-op frustrations from 5, which is nice. If you're playing solo, this game is much better than 5 in regards that your co-op partner can only die in rare instances, like if it's a weird insta-kill thing where you kind of lead them into a bad spot that they can't help, but almost the game forces them dead. It's weird to say, like let's say you're trying to run away from Ustanak, and you don't open a door in time and Sherry gets killed. That's the only way that your co-op partner dies in 6, which is a big improvement. They don't share the health bar. They don't share ammo either, which it might remove a level of realism or whatever, but who really cares, because it makes it better. It makes it more fun. So I think 6 is very underrated. I listed as it being the most underrated game of all time because anytime you see somebody make this list, they just do the generic, I'm putting it at an F. Like, there's no insight or thought into that at all. You just hate the type of game it is, so you instantly degrade it versus what it actually is, being a different genre. I mean, that's kind of... I mean, if that's your opinion, that's your opinion, but it's very short-sighted when you consider how action-heavy this game really is, how action-heavy this game is. I mean, it does take the next steps. Sure, it crosses the line, but come on, at the same point, I think it's very short-sighted, very tunnel vision of what you want, because most games should be down here, and if you're going to penalize it solely for that. Heck, this game uses slow-mo more than any of them. So yeah, let's see. We'll do Revelations 2 next. This is a D. Revelations 2 is boring, and boring is bad. That's the worst thing a game can be, is boring, and it is that. There's some good stuff. I think Barry as a whole is pretty good in it. I think Alex Wesker is really good in it. And that's pretty much about it. I think fighting this stuff is fine overall. But this game has so much padding in it. Especially the late game Barry stuff is like 90% task just to get you to Alex Wesker. It is ridiculous if you go and look at how much... Like, you're just moving like a metal crate around, and it's like a whole 10-minute section dedicated to that. Then you go and do this crane puzzle, another 10 minutes to that. And then you do this underground poison mine section, another 10 minutes to that. And it's like, I might be overstating the 10-minute factor, but it's just this, it's all just filler. It's not fun to do either. And on top of that, we cannot forget to mention Moira is the worst character in this entire franchise, probably. I mean, she is as bad as the Claudes in this game, the Jokers in this game. She is terrible. She is so cringeworthy. It is... Oh, I hope she never comes back. Yeah, Claire is in it, but I would say Claire in this game I've often compared to like being that actor that gets a big paycheck to come in and do like a B movie and they kind of just phone it in. That's what Claire kind of feels like in this game, where like if you compare her to the Code Veronica or RE2 Claire, this one's pretty whatever. She wouldn't have any credibility if it wasn't for the fact that she was in those other games because of this game. But yeah, I mean, above all, the Moira factor, all that stuff, the biggest problem is the game is boring. I think it is anyway. I've never been a fan, but man, it is a slog of a game. Alrighty, okay, so we'll do Umbrella Chronicles. I didn't play it on this recent story marathon, but this game's pretty good. The reason it's only a C is because I think the added content is not as good, but the actual quote, like, stuff where they recap 0 and remake 1, and then Wesker's escape and everything like that, I think is excellent. Very good stuff. I didn't think the hack on Umbrella segment was actually all that good. But yeah, overall, solid game. It kind of gives some decent reasoning of where Rebecca is, like in Remake 1 mentally, to try and kind of patch the idea that she was super confident and able to kill, like a tyrant on her own in this game, but then is scared to death of a hunter in that one. It kind of addresses stuff like that. It does have a bizarre side story of its own, though, that is canon, involving a tyrant that wears these bizarre-looking sunglasses and everything. But yeah, it's fine. It's a rail shooter. It handles decent enough. I played the PS3 version. I bet you on the Wii, if you can play it on the Wii, it's probably really good. So yeah, it's fine. It's a notch above these two as far as being a game like that, I'd say. Granted, this especially is different than that, but you know what I mean. Alrighty, where are we going next? What do we got? 7 next? 7 is an A. 7's one of my favorites to play. It's weird because it has the worst lead in the series in Ethan. It has probably the most unlikable hero group if you factor in Mia and Zoe. I don't think either of them are very good. Especially Mia. Mia's a disaster. She's like, I don't know. If you take the characters of this game and bash their heads in with a frying pan, you kind of get somewhere around where Mia is. But the Bakers, however, are fantastic. All three of them, Lucas, Marge, and Jack, they're excellent. And if you consider the fact of DLC, which this game gets a huge boost from, you have satisfying conclusions for Lucas, Jack, and Marguerite. Plus, you have Joe in the End of Zoe DLC, and a very solid Chris. Even though his appearance is what it is weird looking, his character is excellent and not a hero. Yeah, that gives RE7 a good boost, I'd say. But playing the game, like menuing and just shooting and doing everything gameplay wise, it is really tight, feels really good. And above all, I'll say this is it's probably the scariest game to play on a blind playthrough. I think that's pretty safe to say. So yeah, I've poured more hours into it on stream than any other Res Evil, and I think it is an excellent game as a whole. Evelyn's weak, the boat is weak. but I'll say the back end of the main game is weak. However, the DLCs to me do redeem that. And there's other DLC too that's pretty good. Like the Daughters DLC lets you play as Zoe and you can see how the family got infected, which is pretty cool. And then there's other ones like the Birthday and 21 and all those, which are a little different, but yeah, still decent stuff. Hey, baby. That's right. Alrighty. So Mercenaries I haven't played. I haven't played Reverse. I haven't played Outbreak 2. I haven't played Darkside Chronicles, although I will note on this game, this game, I don't think I can play. I've seen it played, and it made me motion sick almost watching it. Because it's like Umbrella Chronicles, a rail game, except there's this bizarre swaying movement they added to it, which is, yeah, I don't get it. I haven't played Reverse. I haven't played Umbrella Corps. I played Operation Raccoon City, but it was back when it came out, so it's been too far removed. I haven't played Gaiden, and Outbreak I only played once. I didn't like it when I played it the one time, but I played it solo on the PS2 version, and, well, I know there's only a PS2 version, but you know what I mean there. It wasn't very good, but again, not enough real experience with the game to say it, so everything here is off. So that leaves us with these three. Re2 Remake is S. The big promotion up to an S. Re2 Remake does lack the B scenarios of the original. It doesn't have the cool zapping features of the original. However, the game is insanely fun to play. I think it is, and it's crazy fun to play. The G/Birkin, whatever you want to call it, the way he transforms and is ever present through the game is excellent. All of his boss fights are great. Unless you're speedrunning, then they're a huge pain in the ass, but that's different. And the story is well presented. Other than some weird googly eye moments to Leon, Clara's great, Leon's great, Ada's great, Sherry's great, Irons is great, Marvin's great. All the characters, all knocked out of the park. Yeah, I think it's a tremendous game. Like I said, it's the only real problems you can have, I think, with this game are simply because this game exists. I know that's kind of weird to say because it's a remake, but if you never knew the B scenarios existed in this game the way they do, you probably wouldn't care one bit and knock this game at all. I'll also say the music is tremendous. It does some nice bits of letting you use the original game's music if you want, which is kind of cool. But yeah, from a gameplay standpoint, the game's tremendous. It is excellent. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. It's a great game. Marvin's dead. Yes, Marvin dies. Feels bad. Oh yeah, Mr. X. Yeah, Mr. X, the ultimate meme. Yeah, he's in, and he, broke the internet for like a week. And people still come in with the same generic memes every time you play the game and say the same stuff. He's made that kind of impact. Rightfully so, though. So yeah, it's yep, that's right, Teddy. Yeah, that's right, Ark. Oh god. But yeah, so yeah, I think it's an easy pick to be up there. The Re3 Remake, though, is the complete opposite issue, and it is a solid D. D for damn, that is a bad remake. It is a really bad remake of a game, for one, but it's also just not a very good game on its own. Like, forget this game exists. Throw it over here. It's not very good. D for Dan hates this game, yes. I would say, like, the biggest disappointing facts are, I mean, obviously you explore the city even less than you do in the original, which is saying something, but the game just feels on rails, and I would say they made Jill a little too prickly in it, although they made Carlos, Mikhail, and Nikolai all better. They completely botched the iconic stars line. Nemesis is rough. D for bitch can't even swim. There's some good quotes, like the bitch can't even swim, that's great. Get off my train, shitbird is great. I think Nikolai especially is good, but you know, Nikolai is actually the main villain of Re3 Remake. Nemesis is like the goon. You notice this game doesn't even have Nemesis's name in it. It's just called Resident Evil 3. This is our Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And the thing is, like, Nemesis is so badly handled, I bet you he wanted to have his name cut from the damn title. Because there's a great boss fight on the roof with him. I think that one's really fun. He has a flamethrower going, and it's a really solid first boss fight. And when he does chase you in the city, the brief stints, he's pretty good. But they have that real but from then he becomes like a giant alien xenomorphic dog thing, and they have this really stupid mechanic that they could not get away from, where they have him running around the top of the rings arenas in both the clock tower fight and the acid fight, which for various reasons are probably the two most iconic fights in the original 3 games, and they completely botch them. The acid fight is terrible. That is probably, in my opinion, one of the more clever horror game boss fights on the PS1, and they completely ruined it in this game. And it's not even ruining it from a, like, you're sitting there, Nemesis is like 20 times your size, and he can just level you with like 2 punches. Why is he stopping to run away from you to begin with so you can shoot him down? They just could not get that mechanic out of their mind, though. It was bad. And then the final boss fight, I guess the final Nemesis is probably the second best fight in the game, boss fight wise. But I mean, if you're playing on anything above standard, it becomes total bullshit, and it instantly drops to probably the worst, because they just have him be an uber troll with his timing, and he can insta-kill you, and it's everything about it. The way the menu works, the menuing, for example, will feel like it's an older game than this one. It's like you can tell the B team made this one, which is true. And where this game has so much refinement with little things like that this game lacks. The DA is way out of control in it as well, where because of how short of a game it is, they want to flux it up as much as they can, that it scales incredibly high, and just it becomes crazy quick in that regard. Yeah, just a bad video game, I would say. I only give it props for some of the characters they improved, and it's playable enough. Kind of like Revelations 2 and Dead Aim. It fits down here, though. I like I said, and only a portion of that is the disappointing factor of it, the remake side. This is just strictly talking of it as a game itself. Yeah, it's being mentioned. The visuals and the music are quite good. That is a fact. So last but not least, but maybe most disappointing, is Resident Evil Village, which I'll throw on the C tier. Village, obviously, follows up 7. 7 I put in the A slot. I love that game. Village could get DLC that helps it out, but it's not going to help it beyond its biggest problems. For one, we can't help but mention the plot is so stupid in this game. It is mind-numbing how badly delivered and done it is. The entire game is built around the idea of Chris being an idiot, for one. And then there's the twist, the mold twist, which is just silly to the point of, I mean, the layers that go into the idea of Ethan reproducing as a mold man and so many layers there. Where the game works. It works when you're going through the village initially. It works when you get to the castle. The castle is amazing, the layout of it. It's got the thick. It's got the witches and the Lady D. They're fine. You know, they do what they're intended to do. We'll put it like that. But the castle's too short. And then the game, instead of riding the momentum of that, will throw you suddenly into a PT knockoff for like 30 minutes. Again, pretty short section. And a lot of people like this because it's a horror segment, and it is very scary. It's, as a singular segment, it might be the scariest thing in the whole series. But its pace completely differs from the earlier part of the game. It's jarringly different. It's like you're playing, if you're playing it or watching, you're like, is this a different video game? And yeah, it's scary. The baby, we all want to throw a grenade down its mouth and throw it down the garbage disposal, but, you know, it is what it is. But after you've played it once, it becomes a slog to go through, because all of that scare factor is completely removed once you know how to do everything. And it's just the jarring part in there. So then you go to the Moreau part, where Moreau is excellent. He's great. I think his area and the castle are the best parts. And, you know, Moreau I especially like because he's probably the one villain in the game that actually feels like a Resident Evil villain. And I'm not saying this series needs to be held to the standard that it's a certain thing. I mean, hell, I put RE6 up here for the exact reason of not doing that, because, you know, people that hold it that it should be, put it down here just because it's an action game. I don't put it like that, but I will say, he at least feels like he belongs in the game that you're playing. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. And then that's where Heisenberg becomes a problem. Heisenberg is excellent. He's well written. I think the delivery of him is very good. But he feels like he's a Metal... I've said it, it's been said many times, he feels like a Metal Gear villain thrown into Resident Evil. Where, you know, he has the weird magneto powers, and the virus just gives people whatever the hell they want to do at this point, because they've run out of consistency ideas. You know, so he's got that, and he's a really cool villain, but he's in the wrong video game, it feels like. And again, it's very jarring. The game is just... imagine, like, all the RE6 campaigns. They each have their own different kind of flavor, but they're all separate from each other, and they intertwine the way they should. So it keeps the game pretty well focused for as crazy as it is. This game, Village, doesn't really do that. It has kind of that same feel to it, but it's all jammed into one game, and it becomes a bit of a mess. And you add in the fact that there's just the plot holes and the stupidity of the plot, and it kind of becomes a pretty weak to okay game. Now, there are plenty of cool moments. I think the weapons are overall good. The usage of the Duke is pretty good. The combat and the gameplay itself feels good. I think giving Ethan a pushback was a nice addition. Ethan himself is much better. They gave him some actual personality. It's weird, they kill him and then they give him some personality. And And Miranda is a better villain than Eve, although she's not great still. Again, she's kind of that non-existent villain, kind of the Alexia situation where you know about her and she's in a few scenes early. See, when she was in the game early, I was hopeful she'd be kind of ever present, because the game obviously is meant to copy 4 in a lot of ways. 4 has Sadler sprinkled throughout, and you never forget about Sadler as the game's going on, and he's consistently there and he's consistently solid. But Miranda kind of vanishes after the first 20 minutes, and then she just pops up at the end like, oh yeah, here I am to be the final boss. And she's fine. Like I said, it's better than Evelyn was. So yeah, that's kind of where I fall with it. Again, maybe if the DLC is great and fills in some plot holes or something, it could maybe get a boost up here. But for now, I think it's pretty well settled to be down there. So yeah, I guess that's it. I guess that's it for all I've played. Yeah, some of these I'm never going to touch. I'll never play this or this one for sure. There might be meme incentives to play some of these, but yeah. Gaiden goes in S tier, by the way. Well, I might have to take your word for it, Teddy.